So nothing screams Christmas quite like a Hollywood reboot about two best friends running for their lives from an oversized snake in the middle of the Amazon, am I right? Anaconda is the newest comedy starring Jack Black and Paul Rudd, and it tells the story of a group of friends facing a midlife crisis as they head to the rainforest with the intention of remaking their favorite movie from their childhood, only to find themselves in a fight for their lives against natural disasters, giant snakes, and violent criminals. Like pretty much every kid that grew up in the 1990s, I indulged in the original Anaconda film with Ice Cube and Jennifer Lopez, for better or worse, and did it really stand out as a property that would still be producing entries 30 years later? Not exactly. But what had me optimistic about this new one is Tom Gormican. Tom Gormican is a director I wasn't even aware of until a couple of years ago when he manned the insane and hilarious meta Nicolas Cage film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, where he plays an exaggerated version of himself and gets recruited by the CIA. Trust me, it's as perfect as it sounds if you haven't seen it. But that movie was hysterical. It was one of my favorites of the year that it came out, and it made me think that this guy had a super bright future behind the camera. Now, did I think his next project was going to be an Anaconda reboot with Jack Black and Paul Rudd? Probably not, but sometimes life gives you what you need instead of what you really want. Or so I tell myself. So when I sat down to watch this film, I wasn't expecting much, but was hoping that this thing didn't end up being as bad as it looked from the jump. And I'm happy to say that even though this movie is still messy as hell and is littered with issues, we probably got the best version of this Anaconda movie that we could have. When it comes to the story they decided to go with this time around, there's absolutely nothing in here that should surprise you on the surface. I mean, guys go to the Amazon to film a movie about a big snake, they find Big Snake, chaos ensues, but there's a little more than meets the eye when you get into the meat and potatoes here. Because much like Tom Gormican's previous movie with Nicolas Cage, the screenplay is super meta, and that actually breathes a lot more life into this film than if they had gone the route of just doing a soup to nuts giant snake movie reboot. There's plenty of critiques in here about Hollywood running out of ideas, milking franchises dry, and just looking at everything in a transactional way to rake in that sweet, sweet box office money. At the core of this story, it's about two childhood best friends pursuing their lifelong dream of making a serious big budget motion picture together after creating a whole host of home movies back in the day. And if you're someone like me that did that a lot with their own buddies, it's easy to get invested in their journey, and there's a surprising bit of heart because of that. Now, before we completely get ahead of ourselves, are there also terrible character decisions, plenty of jokes that fall flat, and really nothing in here that's going to leave that much of a lasting impact? Oh, you can absolutely count on that. But it's better than the usual big budget Hollywood comedy slop in that specific regard. Let's talk about the performances you're going to find here, because when you have a premise as ridiculous and simple as the one we have in front of us with this reboot of Anaconda, you got to make sure that you have some actors at your disposal with the comedic chops to carry this thing from beginning to end. And luckily for us, Jack Black and Paul Rudd are two of the best in the business when it comes to being lovable and funny leading men that you just can't get too mad at when they're in crappy movies because they're easy to root for. Like, come on, Minecraft, Ant-Man 3, they saved those from being as disastrous as they could have been, and that's pretty much what happens here once again in Anaconda. They've got a little bit of help with Thandie Newton and Steve Zahn backing up the rear, and they both definitely have their moments. I mean, Steve Zahn especially. Any movie where he's like a rabid dog let off the leash and just gets to go full crazy, he ends up being a standout. And when it comes to all of the noteworthy scenes in this movie, he's usually involved in one way or another. Let's talk a little bit more about the actual comedy in this movie, because if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. There's no genre that's on life support more than the modern comedy. It's just a fact. Because nowadays, no one wants to offend anybody, all the material feels super sanitized, or it's just filled to the brim with jokes that have already been done before in much better movies. And look, trust me, I'd be as shocked as you'd be if I said that 2025's Anaconda reboot, of all things, would be the one to break the mold and bring us back to the good old days, but I'd be lying if I said that there weren't a few moments in here that really brought the house down and completely took me by surprise, especially for a PG-13 movie. There are a couple of gags that are taken further than you think possible and devolve into the dumbest shit ever, and I mean that as a compliment. Don't start getting too excited over there though, because there are definitely some solid stretches of this story where the jokes don't really land and the tension from the action side of the project isn't taking over, so you're left in this kind of lull, but the sometimes wonky CGI and green screen actually add to the movie's charm a little bit from time to time in a weird way. And without spoiling anything, there are also a couple of big surprises over the course of this movie that really hit, especially if you're a fan of the original Anaconda film, and the project itself being in on the joke definitely pays dividends in the long run. Overall, guys, Anaconda is probably a little bit better than you're expecting it to be. It doesn't take itself too seriously, it's got its heart in the right place, and it's actually super meta meta if you're into that sort of thing. Paul Rudd and Jack Black are as solid as ever, doing exactly what you need them to do to make this whole experience as tolerable as possible, delivering a few huge laughs along the way. Now, it's not exactly the best looking movie of all time, and it's not reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but when it comes to big budget Hollywood comedy movies as of late, I've definitely seen much worse than this. Anaconda gets a Sully score of 3 stars. So that's my review of the latest Hollywood reboot. What do you think is the best comedy of 2025? I think I have to go with Friendship from A24, but let me know in the comments below what you think. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.